Hi everyone, and welcome on my session around a deep dive into the world of Universal Print and Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So Universal Print is the new Microsoft 365 cloud service that you can use to simplify printing as part of your Windows Virtual Desktop environment. So I'm going to talk and explain you everything you need to know about that. But before I do that, I would like to introduce myself. So you have probably seen me in the opening session too, but for the folks that tune in later, I'm Christiaan Brinkhoff. I work as a principal program manager and as well community lead at Microsoft in the Cloud Managed Desktop team. And if you're interested in connecting with me after this session or during this session, you can look me up on Twitter at Brinkhoff_C or at LinkedIn by my first and last name. So I hope to stay in touch with you. So let's get started. So do you know the sound of this printer? So to be specific, this is a very old dot matrix printer, an Oki printer that you might used like 15 years ago. This reminds me of where we came from, right? And where we came from is always important to understand because innovation always happens mostly on things that we did in the past, and that is as well with laser printers, inkjet printers, and as well 3D printers right now. So the move from matrix to laser printers was one of those great innovations, of course. And right now we can do that as well with traditional print servers to Universal Print, to move from a traditional print server environment to a cloud-based PaaS service. So that reminds me as well to one of the quotes that Satya Nadella made like 6 years ago and shared it across the company, which reminds me of being on the cutting edge of technology and improve things that we did in the past. So our industry does not respect tradition, it only respects innovation. So that's the quote that reminds me that you always need to improve processes that you did in the past, or products like traditional printing to Universal Print, but as well traditional VDI to Windows Virtual Desktop. So simplify the process and the maintenance around that is one of those key aspects in simplifying your environment, and as well being part of that digital transformation that simplifies things that you did in a traditional way in the past. So a great quote that reminds me to that. So bookmark this one in your head because a lot of great innovation will come in the next future too to help you in that digital transformation. So let's look a little bit back to the past. So you probably still do it today or have been doing it in the past. Creating a traditional print server environment, spin up a Windows server, install the print server role, add the drivers, and then share that printer to your users. So one of the main problems with that were the drivers, right? So drivers are very specific to the type of printer, and as well if it's like 32 or 64 bits, and that can cause all kinds of errors that you see on the screen here. So I definitely remember the time when I had like those errors on my screen while managing a golden image and put all those different drivers inside that image. So the great thing about Microsoft Universal Print, the M365 service that I'm going to explain here, is that you don't have to add all those printers in your golden image. You can just add one printer, and that is using a Universal Print driver, and that's the only driver that you need to maintain inside that image. And that's a great thing because Microsoft Windows 10 maintains that driver for you, so you don't have to add those drivers manually afterwards. The update of the driver comes just as part of Windows updates. So you eliminate the need for installing printer drivers as part of your golden images. So a very simplified way of doing print management as part of your Windows Virtual Desktop environment. So as you can see in the high-level architecture picture, you see a couple of components. So everything works in conjunction with Azure Active Directory. So that's your main authentication mechanism, and as well where you filter your printers on. So basically assign printers based on an Azure Active Directory group, and then you're good to go to assign it to a Windows Virtual Desktop. You see Microsoft Endpoint Manager, and that's the enterprise-grade service that we use to publish printers to like thousands of virtual desktops, for example. Microsoft Graph can be used to automate and as well use APIs to build, like for example, a portal on top, or automate things to assign Universal Print printers to Azure AD groups or something like that, all kinds of maintenance things that you can do with APIs. So the Office data storage service is being used to spool the print objects to. So that's sort of your cache data storage location service where your print objects are residing before they are spooled to the printer. And as well the Universal Print Pass service. So your Universal Print Pass service includes that traditional print server environment. So you don't have to manage and maintain your operating systems whatsoever. You only have to connect your printers to that Universal Print service. And you can do that with a Universal Print Ready printer, which you can see here. And what does that mean? You can connect and print directly to the Universal Print service if it's supported for Universal Print. So you can go in the menu and connect to Universal Print over Azure AD, and then you're good to go. So no infrastructure is needed on-prem. You can do it as well with a Universal Print connector. That means that you need to install a connector on your endpoint or on a server environment that is sort of like a hub between your on-prem network to the cloud, to the Universal Print service. So basically that means that every printer can be supported with a Universal Print as a connector conversion method in between. There are some other options as well, which I'm going to explain later on. And of course you have your virtual cloud desktop that you use as part of your Windows Virtual Desktop environment, and that can connect directly to the Universal Print service. So you add the printer to your virtual cloud desktop, then you make a default, for example, and then you can print. And your default settings from that printer come along with that printer. And of course, what I explained, you can assign and publish printers via Microsoft Endpoint Manager directly. Another great thing is that you can activate location detection, which means follow me printing. So if you configure coordinates GPS on the printer settings and you have GPS enabled on your physical desktop, you can move your printers along with you. So Universal Print is supported on physical and virtual desktops too, and you can, based on your endpoint, your physical endpoint, you can detect which location you're at, and then you can filter based on location which printer from which office, when we go back to normal, which printer you want to assign. So it's relatively simple to use. I'm going to explain it later on too. No infrastructure is needed if you have a Universal Print Ready printer, and no additional license costs if you have an M365 license, which I'm going to explain later on too. So let's look a little bit to the VDI Pro server of 2021. So these are the preliminary results, and as you can see, where we asked the question, which solutions do you currently or in the near future use for printing as part of your virtual applications and desktop environment? You see that regular print server is still what the vast majority is using, but there is a huge interest as well in Universal Print, as you can see. So a lot of companies are looking forward to simplify how they do print management as part of their virtual desktop environment, because with the pandemic you can ask yourself the question, do I still have to print? And the sort of short answer to that is yes, you have to print sometimes, but probably not so much. And therefore the simplicity of that environment, so moving into a pass service, is way more important, because why should you manage a print server environment as you do as well for a large environment that is constantly being used? So this is definitely one of those steps that you can take to simplify a piece in your environment that is still important sometimes in the most simplified way possible. So I already explained a little bit about Universal Print Ready printers. So if you have those, which can be a broader Canon or Lexmark, and some other vendors are supported too. So I have them all on a partner slide later on as well for you to share. With that you can connect directly to the Universal Print service. If that's not the case, so if your printer product, your hardware product is not available to connect directly to Universal Print, you can use the Universal Print connector, as I said earlier, which is sort of the bridge in between. So you can convert a network printer directly via the connector to the Universal Print service too. So any use case is basically supported within Universal Print because of that. So before you start with configuring Universal Print, you need to configure your Azure Active Directory environment in a hybrid Azure AD join manner. So you can see that on the screen here, the configuration option within the Azure Active Directory Connect feature. So within that, you just need to configure it and click on next, finish, and then you are good to go to use Universal Print as part of Windows Virtual Desktop. Azure AD only is supported too. So if you have a physical endpoint environment running in Azure AD directly, so that's of course supported as well. So you can use hybrid and as well Azure AD only with universal print. So if you go down the road of the connector process, you can install that connector on your physical endpoint, which can connect to the printer in your environment. So you log on with your Azure AD credentials, and then you register that connector into Universal Print. So you give it a connector name, as you can see here, and then the connector is being registered to the Universal Print service. So once that is done, you have to switch this button to on, which means that you enable Universal Print for hybrid Azure AD. And then if you're done with that, you can basically switch over to the Universal Print portal inside the Azure portal. So let me show you a demo of Universal Print in my demo environment over here for you, and as well show you how it looks like from the end user perspective. So how it looks within that Windows Virtual Desktop session, that Windows 10 Enterprise Virtual Desktop session. So first of all, everything that you configure has to go in the Azure portal. So if you go to the Azure portal and you search for Universal Print, you will find this service that you see on the screen here. And if you go to printers and you edit a printer, as I just explained, via the connector or directly, you will see that listed in the printers menu. Here you can see the connectors. You can request properties of that connector, where it is installed, which version is being used. You can share the printers directly over here. So if you have a printer that is connected to Universal Print, you can click on that printer and you can go to access control and then share that printer to a specific user, Azure AD group, or allow access to everybody in your organization. So that's possible too. So if you switch back to the virtual desktop and you go to printers and scanners and you click on add printers or scanner, you can search for printers, and if you have a printer assigned to you via an Azure AD group or directly, you see your printer popping up as a cloud printer. Here you can see my home office printer, an HP OfficeJet 4620 series, and if you click on connecting, it will add that universal print driver to your virtual desktop. And then after that, you are good to go. And if you set default settings like color or black and white mode from within the Universal Print service in the cloud, all those settings will come along into the virtual desktop session as well. So you can predefine some printer properties and preferences because of that too. So let's print the test page, and as you can see, the test page is flowing out of my printer at home. So this is my home office printer that is now connected to the Universal Print service. So you see a regular Windows test page coming out of this printer. So if you're done with this, you can see in the Universal Print portal, you can see that this print object is being transferred to the Universal Print service. So if you switch back to the Universal Print service and go to printers and then to jobs, you will see that that print job is being transferred up to the Universal Print Pass service into the cloud and then being processed and completed. So that's the status that you see popping up on the screen here. So really cool to see that you can print from your virtual client in a simplified way to cloud pass service, which makes it easier to manage and maintain that print server environment that you did in a traditional way in the past, with all this complexity, of course. So what about assigning and publishing like thousands of printers to your virtual desktop environment? How you can do that? That's something you can do with the Microsoft Endpoint Manager integration. So let me explain you how that works. So first you need to list all your printers that you want to assign to your users. So you need to list your print share names and share IDs, and you need to put them into a CSV file. So you need to list them all in a CSV file and say, okay, which printer needs to be default. Then you need to wrap that up into an Intune Win32 content prep win file with the prep tool. And if you're done with that, you need to switch to the Microsoft Endpoint Admin Center console and then go to apps and then add an application. And that application should be a Win32 application that lists that Win32 wrapper file. Then you add a name and a publisher name as well here. So install HP printers, for example, to give that assign module a name, so you know, okay, this is for my HP printers. And so you add that win file in here as well that you created, which include that CSV file. And after that, you add the commands that you see on the screen here. So install policy cmd, adds that CSV file, and as well the printers as part of that command into your virtual desktops as part of Microsoft Intune. So you can give them requirements, so you can make filterings based on operating system build as an example. So only that build or higher can use universal print rules. You need to create a detection rule to make sure that the printers are being added and sort of verify that they are added into your Windows Virtual Desktop environment. So if you click on create, the printers will be assigned to every user or desktop that is part of that filtering option. So if you assign this rule to an Azure Active Directory group, all the users in that group will get that list of printers assigned. So for example, in this demo, you see that one user received the printers. So I already explained a little bit about partners and Universal Print Ready printers. So this is a great list of which hardware partners are supported today. So Canon, Lexmark, Brother, HP, Konica Minolta are supported to connect directly up to the Universal Print service, and as well some other partners that you can see here that add value on top of that too. The OmniBridge is a great example of bridging what we do with the print connector in a different manner. I'm going to explain that in the next slide, what that is and how you can achieve it and how that can simplify that process for you as well while converting legacy printers to the Universal Print service, and some other printers are listed in here as well. So hardware partners, how does that work? So I already explained that Universal Print Ready printers can print directly up to the Universal Print service without a print connector. So how does that work? So previously we had the Universal Print PMs, the program managers on the Desktops in the Cloud video podcast, and they shared an example of Lexmark with us. So here you can see the Lexmark printer console menu in the web browser, and if you go to printer settings and then to network and ports and then to Universal Print, you can register that printer directly to the Universal Print service, as you can see as an option. So if you click on register, you have to sign in with that registration code that you see here in Azure Active Directory. So you do a device registration, so you log on with your print operator or global administrator account here, and at that moment your Lexmark printer is registered inside the Universal Print service, and you will see it popping up inside the Universal Print printers list, as you can see here. So the only thing that you then have to do is share that printer with your users or with a group, for example, that I explained earlier. So as you can see, a very efficient way of connecting your printers up to the Universal Print cloud service. So what are the alternatives to that? So I already explained in the partner slide that we have a partner called Omni. They have an Universal Print 365 bridge that can bridge your on-prem printers that are not Universal Print ready directly to the Universal Print service. So that bridge is sort of the service bus conversion between legacy and new, and you only have to put that bridge inside your network where those printers reside, and those printers connect to the bridge and the bridge connects to the Universal Print service. So a relatively easy way to do that. So this could be definitely one of those steps before your print vendor becomes Universal Print ready to use as part of bridging your legacy printers to the Universal Print service. So I hear you saying, what kind of license do I need for Universal Print? So on the left side you see all the required licenses that you need for Universal Print. So you either need M365 Enterprise E3, E5 or F3, or Windows Enterprise is possible to use too. So all kinds of flexible mechanisms to use Universal Print, and most likely you already have one of those licenses in your portfolio. So that means you don't have to do any additional investments to use Universal Print. So as part of operating systems, we support Windows 10 and as well Windows Server, but Windows Server is not required, and we prefer Windows 10 of course because all the other components are running inside the Universal Print service, and Azure Active Directory is needed too in a hybrid manner or in Azure AD only. So if you are interested in learning more about Universal Print, how you configure it as part of your Windows Virtual Desktop environment, I wrote a blog like a month earlier which is going through all the configuration steps that you need to take in account in order to configure Universal Print, to install Print Connector, to make your Azure Active Directory environment hybrid, and as well to use Microsoft Endpoint Manager to publish those printers to your endpoints. So if you are interested in learning more, please go to aka.ms/Universal youtube.com/conveyor universal print to learn more. So thank you everybody for joining my session. I hope you learned a bunch about universal print, and I hope you learned as well a bunch already from the previous speakers. So enjoy the rest of your day. I hope to see you at a physical or virtual event in the future, and yeah, catch up soon. So thank you everyone.